SAO is a dumpster fire, offering nothing more than recycled tropes and uninspired writing. It's painfully predictable. The supposed high stakes of the show quickly lose their impact as the narrative fails to build any real tension or emotional depth. Instead of exploring unique or complex ideas, SAO opts for lazy fan service and contrived plot devices to try and hold your attention. If you are looking for an anime that challenges you or leaves a lasting impact, look elsewhere. SAO is a time waster that simply doesn't earn its place in the spotlight. Don't bother with SAO. There are countless other movies and shows out there that are far more deserving of your time. These alternatives offer rich, engaging stories that'll actually challenge your intellect and captivate your emotions. Unlike SAO, they feature well-developed characters with depth and complexity, not just shallow archetypes that feel like they're following a script. So why waste time on something so bad when you could be immersed in far better storytelling with genuine substance? Don't settle for awfulness when greatness is just a click away. If you are looking for something worthwhile, check out The Invisible Man. It stands out in the horror genre with a smart script, compelling characters, and real psychological depth. The performances are top-notch, and the tension keeps you on edge from start to finish. Unlike typical horror films that rely on cheap scares, this one elevates the genre with its strong storytelling. The Invisible Man is leagues ahead of SAO. While SAO falls flat, The Invisible Man offers a thrilling, thought-provoking experience that sticks with you long after it ends. SAO can't compare in terms of impact. Watch The Invisible Man instead, you won't regret it. Let's break it down and also explore other Blumhouse films afterwards.
The Invisible Man is a 2020 horror movie. It's based on the 1897 novel of the same name written by H.G. Wells. Additionally, it's a reboot of the Invisible Man movie series. If you're unsure about the ending, then you definitely came to the right place. In this video, I'll explain the ending of The Invisible Man. This video will contain spoilers for The Invisible Man, so make sure you watch that movie first before watching this video. Anyways, let's get started. So Cecilia gets locked up at the Santa Monica Secure Treatment Center after supposedly killing her sister Emily. There we find out that she's actually pregnant with Adrian Griffin's baby. Adrian's brother Tom comes to visit Cecilia, and we find out that he's working with Adrian, who's of course still alive like Cecilia has been saying this whole time. Tom tells Cecilia to have the baby and go back to Adrian. Cecilia declines and knocks everything off the table. When Tom isn't looking, she takes a pen from his briefcase. Later, Cecilia tries to that pen, but the Invisible Man stops her. Cecilia stabs him and the suit isn't working properly. That's when the guards come and try to subdue Cecilia, only to get attacked by the Invisible Man. There's a chase scene that leads outside into the rain. The Invisible Man tells Cecilia to stop fighting, or else you'll hurt the people close to her, starting with Sydney. The Invisible Man goes to James's house and we see him attacking Sydney. James comes home only to get beaten up and nearly killed by the Invisible Man. Luckily, Cecilia arrives in the nick of time, and uses a fire extinguisher to reveal the Invisible Man's location. Cecilia shoots and kills the Invisible Man, and then unmasks him, only to find out that it's Tom, not Adrian. Afterwards, we see armed guards storm Adrian Griffin's house, and it turns out that he was locked and tied up in the basement. We're told that Adrian was set up by his brother. However, Cecilia refuses to believe that, and knows that Adrian was the one who was actually responsible for everything. She calls Adrian and they meet up at Adrian's house to have dinner. Cecilia wants Adrian to admit everything he did to her, but Adrian says that Tom was controlling him. We also see that Cecilia is wearing a wire, and James is listening to the conversation nearby. Adrian doesn't outright admit anything, but he tells Cecilia that he knew her best, and it shouldn't come as a surprise. This subtly confirms that it was Adrian who was behind everything. Only he and Cecilia would know that because of the word surprise. Cecilia excuses herself to go wash up, and we see Adrian sitting alone. Suddenly, his throat is slit with a knife, similar to how Cecilia's sister Emily was killed earlier in the movie. Cecilia arrives at the scene and calls the police. She seems panicked, but then we find out that it's all an act. Cecilia wore the second invisible suit she found and killed Adrian herself. The last word she tells Adrian is surprise. Very fitting. James arrives and Cecilia tells him that James sees the invisible suit in Cecilia's bag and realizes that Cecilia never wanted Adrian to admit anything, but agrees with her that Cecilia walks away and the movie ends. There are no mid-credits or post-credit scenes afterwards, so if you left earlier then rest assured because you didn't miss anything at all. So I think this was definitely an interesting plot twist. I was anticipating this to play out like a straightforward movie, where Adrian was the Invisible Man the whole time, but there were a bunch of unexpected moments like Tom being an accomplice, and how there was a second invisible suit. I certainly didn't predict that Cecilia would later use the second invisible suit herself and kill Adrian. However, I do think a much better plot twist would have been that there was no Invisible Man at all, all, and Cecilia was actually crazy this whole time. Then the movie would play back all the previous events that occurred, and it would show that Cecilia was the one who did everything, and the Invisible Man was all inside her mind. I believe that would have been an even bigger twist. Anyways, there are a bunch of significant changes between this movie and the original novel written by H.G. Wells. Apart from a guy being invisible, it's pretty much unrecognizable. The Invisible Man wasn't even the main character of this movie. Furthermore, in the original novel, the Invisible Man actually made himself invisible. He wasn't just wearing a suit. So, what's next for the Invisible Man franchise? In November 2019, it was announced that a spin-off called The Invisible Woman was in development. It would center around the female counterpart to the Invisible Man. Elizabeth Banks will star in, direct, and produce the movie. Additionally, the movie will be based on her own original story pitch. Erin Cressida Wilson will write the script. Max Handelman and Allison Small will serve as the producer and executive producer. I do think that this movie does leave room for a sequel as well. Cecilia did keep the second invisible suit, so maybe we'll see her using that in a future movie. The original 1933 Invisible Man movie had several sequels, which were all standalone and only loosely connected. They could follow that route, but I would certainly prefer to see an actual sequel to this movie. Moreover, in an interview, writer and director Leigh Whannell said that this movie was not a part of any cinematic universe, so this is not a part of the Dark Universe that Universal Pictures plan to start based on their classic monsters. There are, however, several standalone monster movie projects in development, including Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein. What did you think of The Invisible Man? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. I personally thought it was pretty decent. It's a great thriller that kept me on the edge of my seat and eager to find out what happens next. It's definitely a lot better than the other horror movies we've gotten this year so far. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. The Invisible Man is a 2020 science fiction horror movie. It's based on the 1897 novel of the same name written by H.G. Wells. There's not a lot of Easter eggs and references in the movie, but I still managed to find a total of 9 of them, and I'll explain those in this video. This video will contain spoilers for The Invisible Man, so make sure you watch that movie first before watching this video. Anyways, let's get started. Here are 9 Easter eggs in The Invisible Man. Number 1. Griffin. Adrian and Tom's last names are Griffin. This is a reference to the original 1897 Invisible Man novel written by H.G. Wells. The Invisible Man's last name was Griffin. He didn't have a first name in the novel, but the 1933 movie adaptation gave him the first name of Jack. Number 2. Zeus. Adrian's dog is named Zeus. In ancient Greek religion, Zeus is the sky and thunder god, who rules as king of the gods on Mount Olympus. Furthermore, Zeus was also the name of a real Great Dane dog from Otsego, Michigan, United States. He was famous for being the world's tallest dog by the 2012 and 2013 Guinness Book of World Records. Number 3. Cobalt. When Emily is showing Cecilia the news report on Adrian's apparent, you can see that it says Adrian Griffin was the founder of the optics company Cobalt. This is a reference to the 2018 movie Upgrade, which was also written and directed by Leigh Whannell. Cobalt was the company that Gray's wife Asha worked for. Actor Benedict Hardy also appears in both Upgrade and The Invisible Man. Number 4. C. Cecilia's nickname is just C, as in the letter C. This is a pun because the letter C sounds just like the word see, and not being able to see things is a common theme that occurs in this movie. Number 5. 1949. James is wearing a shirt that says Prestige Records. Established 1949. 1949 is also the year when the Japanese movie Invisible Man Appears came out. Number 6. Disguise. When Cecilia gets woken up in bed, we can see a mannequin wearing a hat and trench coat. This is the same costume disguise that the Invisible Man used in the 1933 movie. Number 7. Bandages. We can see another patient being brought out on a stretcher. This patient's head is wrapped up in bandages, which is another reference to the Invisible Man's disguise from the 1933 movie. Number 8. Billy. When Cecilia escapes from the hospital, you can see graffiti of Billy the puppet on the wall. This is a reference to the Saw movies. Leigh Whannell is the co-creator of the Saw franchise, and was the producer or executive producer for all the Saw movies. Number 9. Jellyfish. When Tom goes to visit Cecilia at the secure treatment facility, Cecilia calls him a jellyfish. Tom was just like Adrian but without the spine. Later in the movie we can see Sydney wearing a jellyfish shirt. Additionally, there are some species of jellyfish which are nearly transparent, which fits into the whole invisibility theme of the movie. Well, that's it for this video. Did you manage to find any more Easter eggs or references in the movie that I didn't mention in this video? If so, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Also, what did you think of The Invisible Man? Let me know your opinion. I personally thought it was pretty decent. There are a few head scratchers, but overall it's a solid movie, with plenty of thrills and excitement. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.
As you can see, The Invisible Man is an awesome movie that'll keep you hooked from start to finish. It's packed with suspense and has just the right mix of thrills and drama to keep you guessing. guessing. The acting is great, and the story really pulls you in. It's the kind of movie that keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole way through. If you are into movies that keep you entertained and a little spooked, this one's definitely worth watching. The Invisible Man is miles ahead of SAO in every way. While SAO often gets bogged down with repetitive storylines and bland pacing, The Invisible Man keeps the energy up and delivers a gripping edge-of-your-seat experience from start to finish. On top of that, The Invisible Man has a much tighter and more engaging plot. There are no filler moments or scenes that feel unnecessary. The Invisible Man builds tension masterfully, keeping you guessing and invested the whole time. Overall, The Invisible Man is simply more compelling, thrilling, and emotionally engaging than SAO. Now, let's talk about some other Blumhouse movies.
The Hunt is a 2020 American movie. If you're unsure about the ending, then you definitely came to the right place. In this video, I'll explain the ending of The Hunt. This video will contain spoilers for The Hunt, so make sure you watch that movie first before watching this video. Anyways, let's get started. After killing a group of elites in the bunker, Crystal decides to go after the only one left, Athena. Before this, there's a 1 year ago flashback scene that occurs. It's an office meeting that shows Athena being fired because of her text that we saw at the beginning of the movie. Athena then teams up with another group of people who also hate the deplorables. They look at people on the internet and pick who to include in the hunt. They can only choose 12 people in total. Back in present time, Crystal makes it to Athena's manor. The two finally meet face to face and we learn about Crystal's backstory. Crystal was chosen to be a part of the hunt because she posted on social media that Athena had a manor where she was hunting and killing other human beings. Athena was just joking back then and it wasn't real, but they decided to make it real because people like Crystal believed it was real. Athena says that the whole thing was Crystal's idea, but there's a big plot twist. Athena got the wrong Crystal. There's someone else with the name Crystal back home, but she spells her name with an E. Therefore, everything about Crystal's backstory we were told earlier was false. There's a big fight scene between Crystal and Athena. The fight eventually ends with both Athena and Crystal seemingly dying after they stabbed each other. Before they both die, Crystal wonders why Athena kept calling her Snowball. Athena explains that it's a reference to George Orwell's Animal Farm. However, Crystal says that Snowball is an idealist, and she believes that Athena should be Snowball. Athena dies, but as it turns out, Crystal is not actually dead. She gets up and eats the grilled cheese sandwich, and uses a blowtorch to cauterize her stab wound. Crystal puts on a dress, takes the bottle of champagne, and goes to the private jet nearby. She tells the crew that she killed people who were trying to kill her, and that she wants to go back home. The crew obliges and they agree to take her home. Before they take off, the flight attendant offers Crystal some caviar. Crystal asks the flight attendant if she's ever had caviar, just like Richard at the beginning of the movie. The flight attendant says no, and Crystal tells her to eat the caviar. Finally, the movie ends with Crystal drinking the champagne and she says it's great. So this movie definitely has a lot of layers, and it's not as straightforward as you would initially think. There's a lot of unanswered questions throughout the movie, especially in the final act. First of all, was Crystal actually the real Crystal or not? Well, I believe that Crystal was telling the truth. She's not the actual Crystal that the elites were looking for. One of the main themes about the movie is the dangers of social media, and how information isn't always verified. The group of elites wanted to punish people for spreading false rumors, and not doing their research. So it would be fitting and ironic if Crystal was the wrong Crystal, because then it proves that the elites also didn't properly do their research, and kidnapped the wrong person because of that. Another question, was Dawn really part of the elites or not? Well, during the fight scene between Crystal and Athena, Athena did say that Dawn was not a part of her group. Once again, I believe that this is the truth. As stated earlier, one of the major themes about this movie is that information isn't always verified. Crystal killed Dawn before he even got a chance to explain himself and prove his innocence. Furthermore, Crystal saw a rabbit in the open doorway, and she ate Athena's grilled cheese sandwich. This is a callback to the story of the tortoise and hare that Crystal told Dawn earlier in the movie. In the story, the hare always won and even ate the tortoise's food. Just like what happened at the end of the movie, the hare represents Crystal and she won in the end, and ate the food. Additionally, the term deplorable is a reference to the phrase basket of deplorables, used by Hillary Clinton during the 2016 United States presidential election campaign. She was referring to the supporters of Donald Trump. Director Craig Zobel and writer Damon Lindelof have both stated that the movie is meant to be a satire on the profound political divide between the American left and right. What did you think of The Hunt? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. I personally thought it was decent. The themes were a bit too on the nose, but overall it was a fairly enjoyable movie. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Freaky is Blumhouse's latest horror movie. The film is directed by Christopher Landon, who also directed the two Happy Death Day movies. 17-year-old Millie Kessler spends her days trying to survive high school and the cruel actions of the popular crowd, but when she becomes the latest target of the butcher, the town's infamous serial killer, Her senior year becomes the least of her worries when the Butcher's mystical dagger causes him and Millie to magically switch bodies. The frightened teen learns she has just 24 hours to get her identity back before she looks like a middle-aged maniac forever. So Freaky is a mashup of Freaky Friday and Friday the 13th. I wasn't really expecting too much from this movie, but it turned out to be a lot of fun. The premise and idea is fantastic, and I'm surprised nobody has done it before. The best part of the film would have to be the performances from the lead actors, Vince Vaughn and Catherine Newton. They're both very believable when they're playing each other, and you can totally buy into the whole body swap concept. It was very amusing and humorous to see how a 6'5" guy would act in a teenage girl's body, and vice versa how a teenage girl would act in a grown-up guy's body. If you enjoyed movies like the two Jumanji sequels, where the characters are playing different people, then I'm sure you'll also love this particular part of the movie. The movie's opening scene is also really great, and it's clearly an homage to other classic horror films. The characters only have 24 hours before the body swap is permanent, and that aspect of the movie also adds a sense of urgency, and you can understand why the characters are in such a rush to get things done. Millie's friends Nyla and Josh were hilarious, and the movie is self-aware enough to make plenty of meta jokes about horror movie tropes and cliches. This is a horror movie, so of course there are going to be lots of kills, and the filmmakers do a good job portraying kills that we haven't really seen before in other horror movies. Unlike the Happy Death Day movies, Freaky is rated R, so they have the freedom to be a lot more gruesome, bloody, and gory than a typical rated PG-13 movie. This film definitely delivers as a slasher movie, and they don't tone anything down. The kills are equally satisfying as they are ridiculous. They do reveal most of the good kills in the trailer though, so that's unfortunate and it ruins the surprise a little. Freaky is a little over an hour and a half long, and I think the pacing was decent. It does kind of slow down a bit during the middle, but picks up the pace towards the end. Additionally, the movie is quite predictable, but it was still entertaining to sit through. Apart from the two lead characters, the other characters like Millie's main love interest and the bullies aren't too fleshed out, and are just following the stereotypical cliches in most standard horror movies. Furthermore, Freaky's ending is sort of anticlimactic, and goes on for a tad longer than it should have in my opinion. Some of the character decisions are also a bit questionable and frustrating. Overall, Freaky is a fun, enjoyable, and campy film that isn't trying to reinvent the genre or do anything too unique, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's exactly the kind of movie you would expect from reading the synopsis. Freaky is definitely worth a watch though if you enjoy horror comedies, and the body swap gimmick should be enough to keep you entertained all the way until the credits roll. I'm gonna give Freaky a 6.5 out of 10, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Christopher Landon is going to do next. I think he's currently working on the third Happy Death Day movie, but it'll be interesting to see what comedy movie he remakes as a horror movie. Christopher Landon actually stated on Twitter that the Happy Death Day movies and Freaky could possibly take place in the same universe, because they share the same DNA. Millie and Tree could bump into each other someday. If a crossover does happen, I would be excited to watch that. What did you think of Freaky? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Freaky is a 2020 American slasher comedy movie. In this video, I'll explain the ending as well as what's next. Let's get started. The final act of the movie begins at the school's homecoming dance. The Butcher in Millie's body kills 3 football players, and then another football player later on. Millie and her friends are able to find the Butcher, and she's about to stab him with the Ladola dagger. However, the alarm on Millie's Apple Watch goes off, which means that she's too late, and now she's stuck in the Butcher's body forever. But Josh realizes that the bell hasn't rung yet, and Millie remembers that she would always set her watch 5 minutes early, so she wouldn't be tardy. This means there's enough time left to make the switch. Millie stabs the Butcher, and the two switch back their bodies. The police arrive just in time and shoot the Butcher down. In the ambulance, it looks like the Butcher has died, but he faked it by removing his fingertip pulse oximeter. The Butcher goes to Millie's house and attacks her and her family. Luckily, Millie is eventually able to overpower and outsmart the Butcher. She stabs him with a wooden post, and the Butcher dies. Finally, the movie ends with Millie saying that she's a effing piece. Something interesting to note is that the Ladola dagger isn't destroyed at the end of the movie, which means that they could very well make a sequel, where another body swap happens, due to someone else getting stabbed by the dagger. The potential for a sequel is definitely there. In an interview with Inverse, producer Jason Blum stated that he would love to make a sequel to Freaky, and he's ready for it. There are currently no immediate plans for a Freaky sequel, but I'm sure that if the movie does well, they'll definitely make another. Blumhouse movies don't usually cost a lot of money to make, and they get a huge return on investment, so the chances of getting a sequel is highly likely. Vince Vaughn's character, the Butcher, probably won't return for a sequel since he's dead, so they'll have to go with someone else, unless they decide to make a prequel or something, but I don't think that's what they're gonna do. Additionally, writer-director Christopher Landon said on Twitter that Freaky and the Happy Death Day movies probably take place in the same exact universe. They share the same DNA, and there's a good chance that Millie and Tree will bump into each other someday. If you didn't already know, Christopher Landon also directed the two Happy Death Day Day movies. A crossover would be awesome to see. I really enjoyed the 2 Happy Death Day movies. All the movies were produced by Jason Blum's production company Blumhouse. In an interview with Cinepop, Jason Blum explained that he would be open to the idea of connecting his films into a shared universe. Here's what he said: "We would like to do that. We're thinking about it. I probably should have. It would have been easier had I thought of it earlier, but we're thinking of doing it, with some of them anyway, and it's something that I'd really like to do." A cool detail and freaky is that Booker's last name is Strode, which is the exact same as Laurie Strode from the Halloween movies. It's possible that Booker is somehow related to Laurie, which would further support the shared Blumhouse universe idea. Blumhouse produced the 2018 Halloween movie, and they're making 2 more sequels, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, so maybe they'll throw in a deeper connection in one of those movies. If you're wondering why Freaky got a theatrical release, instead of going straight to digital immediately, it's because Universal has an agreement with some theater chains like AMC, where they can play their movies in theaters for 3 weeks, before they move them to a premium video on-demand service. Freaky will be out on video on demand in just a few weeks. Moreover, in an interview with Rue Morgue, Christopher Landon explained his decision to make this a rated R movie, unlike the rated PG-13 Happy Death Day movies. Here's what he said: "When Michael Kennedy and I were conceptualizing the movie, and when we got started writing, we wanted this to be really bloody and very rated R. We felt like the body swap concept is sort of inherently cute, and to fully pull off this weird genre mashup, we needed to go gory to heighten the disparity between these 2 genres. It felt like we were trying to make a really violent Disney film. That's what we were after, and there was never a doubt. For us, it was a real deal breaker when we brought the project to Jason Blum and Universal, because there was always the chance that they would force us to make it PG-13, and we did not want to neuter it, and they actually never even suggested it. Now that he's remade Groundhog Day and Freaky Friday as slashers, Christopher Landon said that he's going to do another movie with Michael Kennedy. He's not writing it, he's just going to be the producer. It's been really fun to work on, and the movie involves time travel, so it's pretty cool." Unfortunately, Christopher Landon isn't able to say anything else. Freaky was a mashup of Freaky Friday and Friday the 13th, and the movie came out on Friday, November 13th in real life, so that's really smart how they planned it out like that. Most of the movie also takes place on Friday the 13th, so that's very fitting. Freaky's original name was going to be Freaky Friday the 13th, but I guess they changed it because it was a little too on the nose. The Blissfield Butcher's mask does strongly resemble Jason Voorhees' mask from the Friday the 13th movies though. If you want to know what other Blumhouse movies are coming out next, there's The Vigil coming out on February 26, 2021, The Forever Purge coming out on July 9th, 2021, Halloween Kills coming out on October 15th, 2021, Paranormal Activity 7 coming out on March 4th, 2022, and Halloween Ends coming out on October 14th, 2022. Some other Blumhouse movies that don't have a release date yet are Run, Sweetheart Run, This Is the Night, Boogeyman Pop, Dracula, Five Nights at Freddy's, Hurt, Merrily We Roll Along, Spawn, The Thing, Vengeance, Wolfman, The Manor, Black as Night, Madres, and Bingo. What did you think of Freaky? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. I personally thought it was pretty good. It was a lot of fun to watch, and I'm definitely looking forward to more. Katherine Newton and Vince Vaughn were great, and their performances were the best part of the film. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. The hedge maze part of that line is a nice reference to The Shining. In that movie, the iconic climax scene takes place in a hedge maze. This is a pretty creepy opening scene. You want to find out what's going on and why this guy's getting kidnapped. Also, it's fitting how the car is white. The whole movie is about how white people are taking over black people's bodies. This movie has a great title theme song. It's called Sikiliza kwa Wahenga. The song is sung entirely in Swahili with the exception of the English word brother. This is because the composer of the song, Michael Abels, felt that the word brother had a special and universal meaning among black people. Additionally, Michael Abels stated that the voices in the song represent the souls of black slaves and lynching victims trying to warn Chris to get away. In fact, the translation of the lyrics is, "Brother, run, listen to the elders, listen to the truth, run away, save yourself." The movie's title card and opening credits here are actually a reference to The Shining's title card and opening credits. It's the exact same light blue color. Additionally, both movies' title cards and opening credits appear over landscapes that primarily feature trees. The part where Chris is rubbing shaving cream on his face is a nice touch. The shaving cream is white and the movie is about how white people want to take over Chris's body. The scene is foreshadowing what might happen later. Redbone by Childish Gambino here is a nice touch. That song really fits this movie. The writer, co-producer, and director of this movie, Jordan Peele, said that he wanted that song because of its lyrics, including Stay Woke and Don't Close Your Eyes. This movie does a great job throwing off the audience. You would think that Rose and her family don't care if Chris is black or not. However, that's actually the only reason why Rose is dating Chris in the first place. Some nice foreshadowing here. In the final scenes of this movie, it's actually going to be Rose in the driveway with a rifle trying to kill Chris. Once again, this movie does a great job throwing off the audience. You wouldn't really expect Rose or her family to be the antagonists of this movie, but they actually are. It makes sense why Rose doesn't want Chris to smoke. It's because it will damage his body. Therefore, Chris's body won't be as valuable to the people who are trying to buy it. This is actually a director trademark of Jordan Peele. He said that he has a general affection for TSA screeners, and he doesn't just see them as annoyances at the airport. In fact, several Key and Peele skits have been centered around TSA agents in various settings. Rod is pretty hilarious. Lil Rel Howery does a great job playing that character. This is actually a very clever scene. Chris going to check on the deer shows that he has sympathy for others, while Rose does not. Additionally, Chris is shocked by the accident because of his childhood trauma. Later in the movie, we find out that Chris's mother died in a hit and run. Jordan Peele is actually the one who voiced the sounds made by the wounded deer. This is another very clever scene. Rose isn't actually defending Chris or sticking up for him here. She's trying to avoid a paper trail. If the cop had run both of their licenses, there would be a record that Chris and Rose were together before his eventual disappearance. The omega symbols here are a nice touch. Omega is the last letter of the Greek alphabet. This is a subtle representation of quote-unquote the end for Chris. That's a very clever line. Black mold can also refer to the black people because the Armitage family transplants the brains of white people into the black people's bodies. The basement is where it takes place in. This movie is great at giving the audience subtle hints. Later we find out that Georgina is Dean's mother. It's fitting how Walter is wearing a hat. It's to cover up his scar from the brain transplant. Again, this movie is great at giving the audience subtle hints. Georgina and Walter are Dean's parents. Therefore, that line makes complete sense. He didn't let them go. Some nice foreshadowing here. Later in the movie, we see that the tapping is what puts Chris in a trance. It makes sense why Rose's parents are concerned about Chris smoking. Again, it would damage his body, and therefore his body wouldn't be worth as much. The part where Georgina spills the iced tea is a nice touch because Missy accidentally tapped her spoon against the glass. This caused Georgina to go into a brief hypnosis. Very touching moment here between Chris and Rose. Again, you wouldn't really expect Rose or her family to be the villains. This movie definitely does a great job fooling the audience. Very effective jump scare. The scare cord definitely managed to do its job. It makes sense why Walter is running so much. Earlier in the movie, Dean explained how his father lost to Jesse Owens in the 1936 Summer Olympics. Therefore, Walter is running to try to improve his time. Also, this scene is a good reference to the power of depth in movies. Jordan Peele stated that somebody running at you or towards you just creates a visceral and physical reaction for the audience. Another effective jump scare. Also, it's fitting how Georgina is trying to fix her bangs. It's to make sure that her scar from the brain transplant is invisible. It's fitting how Missy is using a teacup and a silver spoon to put Chris into hypnosis. The teacup is symbolic because slave masters used to summon house slaves using teacups. Additionally, the silver spoon can be a reference to the term born with a silver spoon in one's mouth. This is a saying to indicate that someone comes from a wealthy family. The hypnosis scenes here between Chris and Missy were actually inspired by the movie The Silence of the Lambs. That's definitely a nice touch. This is a very creepy scene. The sunken place is pretty scary. Additionally, the sunken place can be a metaphor for the paralysis that people of color feel in racial America. It's fitting how all the people here are driving black cars. It's to symbolize how they're also wanting to drive and take control of the black people's bodies. It's fitting how Walter is welcoming the guests. You wouldn't really expect the groundskeeper to be greeting the guests. However, it's because Walter is the grandfather, so he knows all these people. This movie is great at giving the audience subtle hints. Gordon wants to see Chris's form because he's deciding whether or not to bid on Chris's body. If you look closely, all the people at the party are wearing a little bit of red. However, Chris is wearing blue. This is to show how Chris stands out and he doesn't belong. It's fitting how Logan is wearing a hat. Just like with Walter, he's doing it to cover the scar from the brain transplant. Again, this movie is great at giving the audience subtle hints. Logan acting strangely here should indicate that something is off. It makes sense why Georgina doesn't understand these modern slang terms. She's actually Dean's mother, so she's not familiar with how people talk nowadays. Again, this movie is great at giving the audience subtle hints. Georgina and Walter are Dean's parents. Therefore, that line makes complete sense. They get treated like family because they are family. This is a very clever scene. It's fitting how Chris's cell phone camera gives him his first insight into the mystery of Logan's strange behavior. In recent years, cell phone footage has been instrumental in shedding light on police brutality cases in America. Also, the camera's flash can represent quote-unquote seeing the light, and that's why Andre is temporarily in control of Logan after seeing the camera flash. Ah, so that's where the title Get Out comes from. This is a very clever scene. The auction here is reminiscent of the slavery auctions back when slavery was legal. Very touching moment here between Chris and Rose. Again, you wouldn't really expect Rose or her family to be the villains. This is a very creepy scene. You know that something is wrong because earlier in the movie, Rose said that Chris is the first black guy that she's ever dated. Now it's clear that something is definitely wrong. At first you thought that just Rose's family members were doing something shady. However, now it's revealed that Rose is in on it as well. The Flight 237 part of that announcement is a nice touch. It's another nice reference to The Shining. In that movie, room 237 is the haunted room number in the Overlook Hotel. Jordan Peele is actually the one who said the "a mind is a terrible thing to waste" part. The mounted deer head here is a nice touch. Towards the beginning of the movie, we saw how the deer was helpless and left to die. die. This is pretty much the same situation that Chris is in now. It's fitting how there's cotton in the couch. Chris is now forced to pick cotton in order to survive, just like how slaves are forced to pick cotton in order to survive. This is a very ironic scene. It's probably the only time where a black man picking cotton has been a life-saving task. That is brutal. It's fitting how Chris killed Dean with the mounted deer head. It goes to show that Chris is not a wild beast that can be tamed. Additionally, Chris will not be another trophy for the Armitage family. The part where Chris stabs Jeremy's leg is a nice callback to the conversation earlier in the movie during the dinner scene. Jeremy states that jujitsu forces one to think 3 steps ahead. In this scene, Chris attempts to open the front door twice, only for Jeremy to kick it back shut. However, on the 3rd attempt, Chris outsmarts Jeremy at his own game. He anticipates that Jeremy will kick the door again and thus is ready to stab him in the leg. The part where Rose is eating Fruit Loops and drinking milk separately is a nice touch. It's a metaphor for never mixing non-white and white things. Additionally, Fruit Loops is slang for a crazy person. There's actually a reason why there's a knight's helmet here and why Jeremy was wearing it at the beginning of the movie. Jordan Peele explained that he had created a large backstory for the Armitage family and their group of friends. They belong to an ancient secret society descended from the Knights Templar, who are also associated with the Holy Grail in popular culture. For centuries, they have been trying to seek eternal life that was promised by the Holy Grail. Now they have finally achieved eternal life with the brain transplant procedure. This is why there's a knight's helmet in Jeremy's car. The part where Chris decides to save Georgina is a nice touch. Chris wasn't able to save his mother and he feels guilty about it. Now he has a chance to save someone else. That's why Chris couldn't leave Georgina behind. Additionally, he didn't realize that Georgina was Rosa's grandmother. Now you can see Georgina's scar from the brain transplant surgery. As I stated before, the reason why Georgina was adjusting her bangs was to cover the scar. Now you can see Walter's scar from the brain transplant surgery. As I stated before, the reason why Walter was wearing a hat was to cover the scar. The part where Walter is reminiscent of when slaves would instead of being forced to work on the plantations. They knew death was better than bondage. This is a very clever ending. It was originally supposed to be 2 white policemen who show up. They would arrest Chris for the murder of the Armitage family in order to reflect the reality of racism. However, it turns out that the copier is actually Rod. Jordan Peele decided to go with this ending because by the time he was shooting the movie, it was quite clear that the world had shifted. Racism was being dealt with, and people needed a release and a hero. That's why Jordan Peele changed the ending and had Rod turn up instead. Rod is pretty awesome. The way that Rose is left to die is a nice touch. It's similar to how Chris's mother died. Upgrade is a 2018 cyberpunk action body horror movie. It's written and directed by Lee Winnell. In this video, let's take a look at some Upgrade Easter eggs and trivia. The car that Gray is driving here is a 1977 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. This is the exact same car that Burt Reynolds drove in Smokey and the Bandit. The device is called STEM. STEM was actually the original title of this movie. Furthermore, the word STEM is Dutch for voice, which is fitting because STEM only presents itself as a voice in this movie. You can see that Gray's wife was born in 2008, and she died at the age of 38. This means that the movie takes place in the year 2046. The camera often tracks Gray so that he remains in the middle of frame during the fight scenes. This was done by hiding a phone on actor Logan Marshall Green. The cameras could then pair to the phone and follow him with as much accuracy as possible.
23.976. Okay.
23.976 is a reference to the industry standard frame rate of film. You can see the name Jay Wan here. This is a reference to James Wan. Lee Winnell is good friends with James Wan and they've worked together on many movies. You can see graffiti of Billy the Puppet on the wall here. This is a reference to the Saw franchise. Lee Winnell starred in the first Saw movie and he's also the co-creator of the Saw franchise.
A fake world is a lot less painful than a real one.
This is a great callback to a moment earlier in the movie. Jamie did explain that the fake world is a lot less painful than the real one.
The fake world is a lot less painful than the real one.
When Stem takes over Gray, he tastes the blood on his finger. This is a reference to the beginning of the movie. Gray also tasted the blood on his finger after accidentally cutting it. Although the movie takes place in the United States, it was filmed in Lee Winnell's hometown of Melbourne, Australia. This movie is very similar to Venom. Lee Winnell said that he was not familiar with Venom before writing the movie. Furthermore, the lead actors of Venom and Upgrade look pretty similar in appearance. Well, that's it for this video. What did you think of Upgrade? Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Also, let me know which is your favorite cyberpunk movie. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications for my channel so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Upgrade is a 2018 Australian science fiction action body horror film. The movie is directed by Lee Winnell and stars Logan Marshall Green, Betty Gabriel, Harrison Gilbertson, and Benedict Hardy. Upgrade is about Gray Trace. A brutal mugging leaves him paralyzed in the hospital and his beloved wife dead. A billionaire investor soon offers Trace a cure, an artificial intelligence implant called STEM that will enhance his body. Now able to walk, Gray finds that he also has superhuman strength and agility, skills skills he uses to seek revenge against the thugs who destroyed his life. This movie is very generic. It borrows a lot from many movies of the same genre. It's not necessarily a bad thing to borrow things from other movies. In fact, a lot of movies do that. But unfortunately, this movie doesn't really have anything different or unique to offer. The story overall is very predictable. It is a revenge story, so I'm sure that you can guess what's going to happen. Like I said before, the movie doesn't really do anything too different. That being said, even though the story is very generic and predictable, there are still some good things about this movie. Most notably, the action and fighting scenes. The action and fighting scenes are very fun and entertaining to watch. This movie is rated R, so they don't really hold anything back when it comes to the violence and brutality. A lot of the death scenes are very gruesome and brutal, so that might be a turnoff to some people, but I personally didn't really mind. It was also cool how the camera moved in tandem with the characters. Unfortunately, several of the fight scenes are shown in the trailer, but regardless of that, they were still fun to watch in the movie. Furthermore, it was cool to see what the technology was capable of in this universe. This movie does take place in the future, but it's not too far into the future, so it was interesting to see what the people would do with the technology that's available. For example, you can actually have a gun implanted into your arm. You can also alter your eyes and get X-ray vision so that you can see through walls. It reminded me a lot of Ghost in the Shell. In that movie, the characters were also able to use technology to augment their bodies. Upgrade was produced by Blumhouse and they're known for their relatively small budget, so it was cool to see what the filmmakers were capable of doing with such a small budget. It doesn't feel like a big budget movie, of course, but it also didn't feel like a very low budget and cheap movie either. Additionally, Logan Marshall Green does a great job playing the main character, Gray Trace. He does have to play a quadriplegic for a solid portion of the movie, and he does a good job with that. You can really feel for his character and have sympathy for him. Overall, Logan Marshall Green is pretty decent as the main character. Unfortunately, the script doesn't really give him much to work with. His character is kind of very standard. You don't really get to learn too much about him or his backstory. Apart from Gray Trace, the other characters are very forgettable and generic. I honestly can't even remember most of their names. They're the typical characters that you would see in a movie like this, nothing really too special. Overall, Upgrade is a pretty mediocre movie. There are some cool things that happen and Logan Marshall Green does a great job playing the main character. Unfortunately, the story is very generic and predictable. Also, the other characters are very bland and forgettable. If you do watch this movie, you'll probably be mildly entertained. But if you don't watch the movie, then you're not really missing out on much either. I'm gonna give Upgrade a 5 out of 10. Alright guys, that's it for my review of Upgrade. If you've seen the movie, let me know in the comments below how you felt about it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos. Also, don't forget to turn on notifications for my channel so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.